And hello, listeners. We've got something special for you today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, we've been looking to talk to someone who is a fucking fraud, a scam. In a past life now, whenever, you know.
Yeah. Someone who has firsthand experience committing scams, frauds, identity theft,
Things of that nature.
Yeah.
So we have a special guest today, and Brandi and I did an interview, and you guys are going to listen to it today. You're so lucky.
Yeah.
And we got to interview Dartanyon Williams, and he is an identity thief.
He was.
He's
a former identity thief.
A former identity thief, the master identity thief. And he gave us some of his time, and we got to ask him some real questions, and he kept it real. And I didn't think I was going to like him, but I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, he was cool.
He was cool.
He was cool.
He was cool. He was cool. Well, if you aren't already, go ahead and connect with us on social at Book of Lies Pod, on Facebook and Instagram at Book of Lies Podcast. We have a group. And you can always visit our website at bookofliespodcast.com to catch up with us and what's going on. And Patreon, it's popping this month, y'all. We're releasing a new episode on Patreon this week also. So if you aren't with us on Patreon, get with us on Patreon, like now.
Do that, please. That would be wonderful.
Do it, please. And enjoy this episode, and thank you guys so much for listening. Have you got a chance to listen to the podcast at all?
I have listened to bits and pieces of it. It's kind of, like you said, it's rare.
That I am recording. I was telling Dartanyon, and I'm Sunny, and that's Brandi. I was telling Dartanyon we usually don't have guests on the podcast, but we've been looking for him as a guest for a really long time.
Yeah.
We got the copy of the book. We read some of the book. I read some of the book. She read some of the book. Okay, we have a guest. So, guest, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Dartanyon A. Williams, author of The Master Identity Thief.
The Master Identity Thief. So, have you talked to a bunch of identity thieves, or are you an identity thief?
No. I was an identity thief some 15 years ago, but nonetheless, it originated in my youth.
Okay.
Having taken both my parents' identities, starting with my dad's, then it scaled to my mom, and then it went on to scale into both sets of grandparents before evolving into a 40-member criminal enterprise.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us where you're from, how old you are, give us your sign. We want to know everything.
Sure. So I'm a country boy at heart. I'm from the town of St. Joseph, Louisiana, which is situated in the parish of Tensas. That's the northeastern region of the state. The locals refer to it as the Delta region of the state. I'm a country boy raised in the agricultural part of the state. And just Louisianian at heart. I'm a Scorpio by sign, born on October the 24th, 1979, which makes me 40 years old to date.
Okay, you got a birthday coming up.
I do.
Brandy's got a birthday coming up, too.
Brandon, when is your birthday?
Oh, it's September 19th. I'm 40, but this year, I'm redoing this year, so I'm not actually turning 40 because this year does not count. This year is a throwaway. So.
Okay, show me how to do that, B.
I'm just gonna ignore it. My birthday is not changing. This year is literally canceled. So. Yeah.
And COVID disrupted a whole lot of things, including birthdays, graduations,
Everything.
Book sales, just everything.
Everything. So I did kind of read your backstory. Growing up in the agriculture, you were letting the cotton fields, doing that for a number of years. I read about the Fruit of the Loom business and all kinds of stuff like that. So you said that it started out with your father, taking your father's identity. So what made you go ahead and take that step? Like, what were you striving for that made you say, I'm going to go ahead and do this?
I was just a curious kid at the time, up to no good. I was watching these Capital One commercials, and at the time their slogan was purchase power. And that's around about the time that Al Pacino's movie Scarface was gaining popularity. And I was just, a young mind, naive in most of my existence. And I was just being distracted and started to want things. Started wanting to want more than what my parents were providing. Mm-hmm. And now I had a good life, a comfortable life as a kid. It was, if not average, just slightly above. And I did not have that to do. But, curiosity led to discovery, and discovery led to further exploration.
Okay. So the Capital One commercials hitting you up, Scarface. I read that part of the book when you were just like, hey, all I needed was a card. That's all I needed, and that would get me what I wanted. Right. What is it that you wanted?
I wanted access. I wanted access to funds. I wanted access to what I believed that I wanted access to the purchase power that I believed the card would afford me. And that it did. It gave me flexibility. It gave me cash flow. Mm-hmm. Because with the card, as an authorized user, after having added myself to it as such, came a PIN number. And I was able to conduct ATM transactions with use of the card.
So basically, you just wanted that purchasing power.
I did. I wanted that purchasing power as a 15-year-old adolescent to do whatever it is that my adolescent mind could contrive at that time. But more particularly, to engage in neighborhood gambling, table card games, and to get a startup or a jump start in the street-level marijuana dealings.
Yeah, that's what I read, that you were like, hey, let me get this money so I can go ahead and, buy enough marijuana, weed, whatever you want to call it. Now it's legal, so who cares? In California, at least. But you wanted to buy that so then you could fund your lifestyle pretty much for gambling and what have you, I guess? Right.
So, I was watching television, and television was inspiring things that were beyond my reach as a kid. But I saw the use of my dad's, the unauthorized use of my dad's credit card in table card games and neighborhood dice shooting in conjunction with marijuana peddling to be a type of alternative to what society had to offer as it appreciates economic opportunity for minorities in that agricultural environment.
Mm-hmm.
How did you know at 15? How did you know how to do that?
So like any new discovery, it had a research and development aspect to it, or rather research and discovery. So what happened was I kept contacting Capital One at the 1-800 numbers that were being advertised on the commercials. And I was doing that in an effort to capture the script, the dialogue that would be part of the interaction or transaction in pursuing an unauthorized. I added myself as an authorized user to my dad's card. So after a number of calls, I know what to anticipate. The questions are calculated because they're reading from a script, or at least they were at that time, as I believe and trust that they're doing in today's time. So reading from that pre-scripted dialogue, I was able to master that and at least engage as if I was one who was informed with the credit card acquisition process.
And did your dad know that you had added yourself?
Oh, no. I was an authorized user.
He didn't say, "Hey, wait, what's this on this statement here?"
No, but basically they caught up to it because at the time I think my parents, the balance on the card was $300. They're real conservative, and their minimum monthly payment was like $25. So I was satisfying the minimum monthly payment of $25, if not more than $50 if I remember correctly. But by the time I maxed out the card, I mean, it had a $5,000 credit limit on it. So obviously, as the balance increases, so does the minimum payment increases.
So you're paying the bill. You're making sure that bill's getting paid. You're getting a credit increases, and you're using the card.
Right. So, but unbeknownst to me, in my ignorance, I did not know at that time that when the balance increased, so does the minimum payment. So I was still sending in the minimum payment.
Mm-hmm.
Capital One calls one day, said, "Hey, Freddie and Linda, or rather Freddie, you're short on this month's payment." He said, "How is that so?" Because my mom would tender into all the bill payments of the household. But my dad would just, be responsible as the account holder and to, as such, make provisions for the house. And they called one day and spoke with my dad, and my dad passed the phone to my mama, and and they called a family meeting.
It's time to have a meeting, y'all. We need to talk about Dartanyon. Who did it?
No, not me initially. So, there's an investigation that has to take place, a Q&A session, and then, your parents are seasoned enough. They know their children, so they can identify guilt on each other's faces. And my mom singled me out in the lineup. Said, "Dartanyon looks guilty." And I'm repeating the refrain that she remarked on the book trailer that's on the book's website. And she said, "I look guilty." And she asked me once, and then asked me, I denied it. Then she asked me again, and I conceded and rather admitted to it. And it was.
And then what happened? What'd she do? What was your punishment?
Well, she threatened to call the cops.
Oh, okay.
And would have if my dad had not intervened. But my punishment was typical in the country. You get a whooping. That's part of it. You get punishment or grounded. That's part of it. You get reprimanded for about a month. That's part of it. And but it didn't deter me. So my dad intervened and did not allow my mom to call the cops. And that was the start of stealing his identity, because it was my dad's identity that I used to eventually purchase a Lincoln Mark 8 around the age of 18. And then I went from my dad to my mom, and it just escalated. So the more I mastered it, the more I began to understand what identity theft was versus credit card theft. I began to monopolize it, or rather monetize it in a way that made it lucrative and not just profitable.
So while you were adopting your parents' identities, what was your thinking? Were you thinking, I'll pay them back, or I don't know what I'm gonna do? Like, how did you rationalize that in your mind?
Yeah, so good intentions somehow always failed us. But I was intended to flip the money, if you will, because I was using identity theft means to invest in drug dealers in an effort to, flip the flop and increase cash flow. But it didn't work like that, because there was this collapsing bridge of a developing, or rather evolving gambling habit between the two hustles. And I just could never sustain one or the other. And as such, they began to act as a type of insurance to each other in terms of hustle and flow.
Interesting. So, were you living at home when you were 18 when you bought the vehicle?
No, I had moved out by then. I had graduated from high school. I had moved out. I had living with a brother in Monroe, living with a cousin in Faraday, Louisiana. Paying because I was a nomad, and as these crimes were developing, I was trying different regions and parts of the state so as to perpetrate them. So what I would do is compact an arrangement, or rather agreement, with relatives that would give me an opportunity to at least establish a domicile residency within that locale, or set up shop, in other words, so that I could move to and fro as I was able to determine just how ripe and ready the region was for the perpetration of identity theft crimes, and as well as credit card crimes in and throughout Louisiana initially.
So when you're moving all over Louisiana, you're in these different parishes, these different cities, and you're setting up shop. Are you coming there knowing nobody, and you're like, all right, this is what I need to do. This is who I need to, connect with, or like, what was? We don't want to teach people how to do this. That's not our game. But we just want, like, because I read your book and you said like, you're pretty smart. You can remember things very well. You can, learn enough, read enough just to get by and get good grades. So what's going on in your head as you're moving around and building these mini empires, right?
Right. So at this stage, you're on a recon mission to identify sources that can provide consumer information and places, merchants and places of retail through which you could channel that consumer information for the purpose of exploitation and gaining or rather acquiring products that would that you can convert to cash. And so it wasn't necessarily I didn't necessarily go on a tour of recruiting people initially.
Mm-hmm.
I was from area to area perpetrating crime myself, which is how my criminal history record began to compile. But initially, I was just going to and fro to stores, different electronic stores, and different Home Depots, different Lowe's, stores that had big ticket items that I could convert immediately to cash based on a merchandise list, is what I called it then. That people will want these products and services, well, products rather, but at a significant discount, at a 50% discount.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So you get the full thing, you get the 5-finger discount, and then they get the 50% discount.
Right.
So at these different stores like Lowe's, like you said, Lowe's, Home Depot, the different electronic stores, when you're buying these products, are you buying them with someone else's credit card, like your mom's card or someone else's card that you may have, someone else's identity, I guess?
No. Yeah, with someone else's identity, but more particularly with their credentials, with the credibility of their Social Security number.
Oh.
How they measure on paper. So, the instant credit market was the and remains the gateway to instant wealth in white collar crime. I knew it then. White collar criminals knows it now.
Yeah.
And just as long as you understand how the metrics and mechanics of the instant credit market works, it can easily be exploited very lucratively. And I'm not motivating, encouraging, or advising, nor am I suggesting that anyone dare try to engage such. I'm just trying to paint a picture in terms of how easy it was for me to do then and how technology has evolved. And so has technology security evolved, but criminality technology is always a step ahead or two of security measures that are put in place that do not anticipate the next move of the criminal. So, yeah, those systems and end scenes are still in place, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. You just put in your birthday and your social, and then you may get a card or you may not. Do you know how many people's identities you've stolen? So
I'll try to answer that question in full context. I had access to thousands of identities, of people's identities. Now, I got to keep in mind that I had access to databases, hospitals.
Oh, no.
Databases in hotels, databases in banks, databases in restaurants at point of sale, databases in tax preparer companies, some of your household franchise tax preparation companies. I had access to thousands, perhaps millions of consumer data, their private and personal data, appreciating their name, date of birth, social security number, driver's license, and or ID number, primary billing address, the 5 components that are needed or rather necessary to effectively steal an identity on the mastery level.
Did you gain all this information from the social engineering? So you calling these different places and learning the questions that they're being asked?
No, social engineering is the ability to perpetrate the scam once all those parts and pieces come together.
Mm-hmm.
So social engineering is the actual engagement. I'm actually in the process in the midst of committing the crime itself.
Mm-hmm.
What happens before that is the collection of the data. And you have people in place. We call them then info operatives. That's simply someone who worked in the employ of a legitimate business, of a bank, of a tax preparation company, a cop that worked for a local city or sheriff's department. These people, whom I would engage and employ in my criminal network as info operatives who had immediate access to the information that was at their fingertips. People that worked in restaurants whom I'd employed just equipped with what is called a skimmer or a data collector. You know how you and Brandi go to the restaurant and sit down and pay when it's time to pay for the check. The waiter comes, take your card, go back, check you out, and bring back the receipt and all that. But you don't know what happens in between arrival and disappearance, or momentary disappearance. So it was that waiter, and I had him in many restaurants in and around town and scattered throughout the state, that would swipe your card first through the data collector that I equipped him or her with, and then ultimately through the credit card terminal.
But I gave them like a good tip, and I was so nice, I wasn't rude, and they still going to steal my information and give it to you?
Absolutely. You weren't giving them the $1,000 a week that I was getting.
I guess not.
At the end of the week. So you were merely paying light bill and water bill, and I perhaps was paying lease payment and car number.
Yeah, you were.
And they knew what was going on, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So you have a network of people
Right.
basically helping you gain access, all this information. And nobody has any qualms with this. All of these people.
Oh, it's you have a conversation and a conversation without a negotiation because you're real aggressive, or at least I was. I was real aggressive in my presentation. $1,000 was a lot of money then. It's a lot of money now, especially in the midst of COVID-19.
Yeah.
Even more so in 2001, 2002, 2003, $1,000 would go a long ways. And I give you $1,000 every Sunday, and you just bring me back at least 500 credit card numbers by swiping with the cards that you get from consumers through this particular advice.
So it's $2 a card.
Equivalent to, yes, but I know I had a minimum, and I knew what I was willing to pay. But in most cases, I would always get 600 numbers, 700 numbers, because it had become a matter of habit. They weren't keeping count, but I would keep count and report back and let them know if they were ever under 500. They never knew that they had always exceeded the quota.
Okay. You're like, you're coming up a little short, Pinky. I need some more of them cards.
We were making enough money whereby I wouldn't double back anyways and say, hey, you shorted me 50 numbers, because off of one number, I'm gonna make that $1,000 that I paid them.
Yeah.
Off of that number, I got 499 more numbers, or I got 370 more numbers, or whatever the shortage might have been. But it was never a shortage. But I'm just trying to give an example that if there was a shortage, I wasn't blinded by the fact nor distracted by that shortage, because I knew that it took but only one number to offset it.
Yeah.
Right.
And were you the only one going out purchasing, using all that purchase power, using all those cards, getting all those credit limits? Were you the only one?
No, ma'am. So initially I was, but eventually I was not. So I had a 40-member organization, 20 of which were info operatives made up of men and women, and 20 of which were field operatives made up of men and women, at that time double my age, to the tune of 40 plus. I used to like to employ people who would not give suspicion at the point of sale transaction. So it was a 40-member team, including myself, being number 41, and that's how we did it. Information would come in through one set. I would collaborate with my printer, which is what I call that poster position, the guy who brings it together, use all the metrics and technology to convert the identity, the stolen identity. And then there was another set of individuals consisting of 20 total men and women that would then assume those identities and go out into what we call the merchant itinerary.
Wow, this is elaborate.
So at some point you had to be like, you know what, I'm untouchable. This is too easy. what was your mindset when basically you were at the top of your game?
It became cat and mouse, cop and robber. Then by that time, at the top of my game, I had amassed $3 million, $3.1 million in cash.
Nice.
Just to give you perspective, if $3.1 million in cash is as a result of identity theft, then that's about $15 million in fraud perpetrated. But that's the cash I had on hand. That's not included the monies, the payroll that I had on a weekly basis. And so I had field operatives to the total of 20 that I paid 2,000 a week salaries.
Mm-hmm.
So I had FO operatives to the total of 20 that I paid $1,000 a week salaries. So that's a payroll of about $60,000 a week. But my quota was a minimum of $15,000 a day.
Wow. If you guys didn't know this already, Dartanyon has a book. He is, what'd you say, what's the name of your book, Dartanyon? I'm sorry.
Master Identity Thief.
He's the Master Identity Thief. Okay. So you wrote a book, and you wrote a book because what happened? Because at the end of the day, you got to get caught, right?
Right.
Or did you give up? Did you get caught or did you give up? Did you turn yourself in?
No, I got caught. So the book captures me making my first $1 million at the age of 19 and losing my last $3.1 million at the age of 23, 2 weeks prior to me going to federal prison. So the identity theft exploits paused in 2003 when I was indicted by the FBI for the perpetration and commission of conspiracy to commit identity theft, aggravated identity theft.
What makes it aggravated?
When you assume the full identity of the victim.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is that, most identities are stolen, data breaches, and then the name, social security number, date of birth are used. And in most cases, it lacks two other key components of information to make the crime full and complete. But aggravated identity theft is when I take that information, put a face with it, produce a driver's license of some form of identification, replicating birth certificate, replicating social security card. I am stealing the full identity of the individual, of the victim, with the intent of stealing their life, their cyber life, their life in the matrix.
Wow. So their online footprint, if you will.
Right. Digital.
Digital footprint, excuse me. Wow, why would you do such a thing?
Because what I was able to discover was that drug dealing was less lucrative but more punitive, and white collar crime was more lucrative and less punitive. So I sold drugs in parallel to my white collar identity theft crimes, but it was more risky. The prison sentences were longer, the bonds were higher, the risk of engagement and interacting with people and personnel with whom you must engage to transact had a greater risk. But identity theft, the white collar crimes did not. So that's where I turned my focus and began to scale the criminal enterprise.
Interesting.
Question, I just forgot what it was. So what led to your arrest? How did the FBI get onto you specifically?
Sure. I was my first criminal arrest was at the age of 18. I was trying to break into a Carroll High School to steal a computer out of their computer lab, so as to better position the perpetration of what I commenced as white collar crimes. But that arrest that followed, subsequent arrest that followed, and the sophistication of the type of crimes that I was perpetrating and committing, just caught the attention of the federal authorities, both not only the FBI but also the Secret Service. And
the Secret Service? Did you go for the president? You went for the president, huh?
Well, I captured that in the book about George W. Bush's identity, but I don't make the admissions as such.
Ooh, y'all gotta check out the book. He does something to W. So you got on the wrong radar, pretty much.
Yes. So as long as I was in and out of jail, state custody, I had enough money to bond myself out of those situations over and over and over and over. You got to keep in mind that the book documents 23 criminal arrests, 4 state convictions, 2 federal convictions, and it was the monies that I had, the resources that I had, and that enabled me to keep bonding in and out of that system. I was put on probation, state probation, once my state charges came to a conclusion. But the whole time while I was on state probation, I was still perpetrating these identity theft schemes and scams and still getting arrested initially, even after being on probation and bonding out of jail. But on one particular occasion, I knew I wasn't supposed to get out of jail, and I ended up still bonding out of jail. And I became suspicious who was watching, or rather lurking in the shadows, watching me, or rather investigating me, in terms of allowing me to perpetuate the crime, so that as part of their investigation, they may learn the sophistication of the schemes and scams that I had in some ways invented, in other ways was committed and perpetrated.
So did they also go after everybody in your network?
No. They did not. By the time that I got arrested, what was part of the negotiation was, well, not negotiation rather, but debriefing, was that FBI, nor the Secret Service, really understood the sophistication with which I was perpetrating these crimes. And part of my plea agreement, if you will, was that I would, engage a debriefing, to the exclusion of anybody that was would otherwise have been identified and indicted as a co-conspirator. So I was able to be on this case by myself, without incriminating anyone else in committing those crimes or being indicted for those charges. So nobody, and I do reference in the book, when at the time that I was being interviewed and debriefed, that one of the agents in attendance, and I think that he was more than less with a state agency, tried to deter and digress so as to inquire about who would help me. But that wasn't part of the agreement, and as such, we shut the debriefing down, took a recess, and came back, and I didn't have that to deal with anymore.
And also, snitches get stitches.
Yeah. More than that on the other side. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I had to say it.
Well, I mean, as basically the boss, I'll use the term, your underlings are depending on you to keep them, out of the mess. So, I mean, that's what you did.
Right. But yeah, it was an underling that on the second trip to the federal feds, because I went to the feds twice. So 2003 I failed, came back and got out in 2004, then again in 2005. Mm-hmm. And that was because my name got brought up by a neophyte, if you will, a novice, that was working under my direction, of course, but nonetheless gave up everything she knew when the local police came knocking, let alone the alphabet boys.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So what are you doing now? So you're on the podcast. Thank you for being here. So tell us what you're doing now. What do you got going on?
I'm consulting now. I'm an entrepreneur. I own a technology firm that stops and stays identity theft in all of its forms and facets. My technology company is Duck Pond Technologies, Inc. The website to it is duckpond.tech. That's DUCKPOND.tech. I'm obviously a published author of a memoir, 2-volume work. That's a best-selling memoir on Amazon in 4 categories. I am a father first, though. Today, I'm fully invested in raising my children so as to create a life and an opportunity of direction for them, whereby they don't have to be redirected, provided they take it upon themselves to take a detour as I did in my youth. So I'm just a serial entrepreneur. I'm considering politics. I'm currently a candidate for the U.S. Senate for the state of Louisiana.
Wow.
And that is underway, and I'm actually calling in today from my office to conduct this interview. And I like to point out that in the back of that book, I offer 50 legislative proposals, all of which are designed to detain, detect, or deter identity theft in every facet and form that it exists to date. Identity theft is an ever-evolving crime, and if we don't get our handle on it now, it's going to be beyond our reach here within the very near future. And specifically, childhood identity theft. What's popular in today's time is the CPNs. Just recently, down in New Orleans, the Louisiana State Police busted a CPN financial services office that was selling CPNs to the general public, or rather to their clientele. And CPNs is simply an acronym for either credit protection number, credit profile number, or credit privacy number. But in essence, what it is a 9-digit number, social security number that belongs to a child, in most cases newborn babies, without a hyphen mark. And that's scaling.
That's scandalous.
Yeah, that's scandalous, and it's scaling, and it's scandalous.
Mm-mm. So, with your company, Duck Pond.
Yeah, Duck Pond Technologies.
So you guys create the technology or equip people with protection or means of protecting or monitoring. How are you keeping my information? How are you keeping my life safe?
Sure. So Duck Pond Technologies is actually a startup that I started last year. I was developing and designing the pending patents alongside writing the book all of 2019, but they're ready to go now as of March 10th of this year. And I'll be bringing them to market at the top of 2021. We'll be engaging a full go-to-market deployment in terms of making these products and services available to the general public. But if you want to take a peek at least one of them, it is SynPen Data Code Technology. That is CNPN datacode.com. SynPen Data Code Technology. And basically what SynPen Data Code Technology is it is the panacea to payment card fraud as the world knows and appreciates it. Visa, MasterCard, Discover Card, American Express, all of which are the network hosts, payment network hosts. But I have the remedy, the permanent solution to payment card fraud as we know it. The EMV chip on your debit and credit card that's in your purse or setting aside on your desk now that you're about to use when this interview. That CVV code on the back of your card, those are obsolete in comparison to SynPen Data Code. I've developed that, and it'll be in the marketplace by this time next year, if not before, especially coming into the holidays when credit or rather payment card fraud is perpetrated at an alarming rate.
It really is.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Interesting.
What lesson would you give to anybody who's considering going into identity theft, or like they come across someone's information and they decide to start using it? It takes a very ambitious person to get to the level that you did, but what advice or what word of warning or lesson would you basically tell the next person who is trying to be the master identity thief?
That the laws are not as lenient today as they were yesterday. Hopefully that's a deterrent. As an identity thief, you got to get away each and every time you transact. The authorities only have to get lucky once to set you back B times. And identity thief, at its core essence, is just an intrusion and a violation of people's privacy. It is evolving and scaling to a matter of national security, having been the fastest growing crime in America for the last 22 consecutive years since 1998 to date. And I would strongly encourage and advise aspiring identity thieves that the federal authorities are looking for you near and far, soon and fast. And it's not worth it. It's not worth the displacement in terms of federal imprisonment. It's not worth it in terms of the havoc that you wreak upon the victim's lives. And you just sometimes, in most cases, you have to put yourself in that position and ask yourself, how would it feel if someone did that to me? And if that doesn't bring you to a place of conviction in terms of consciousness, then you are in a dark space and perhaps need to seek spiritual guidance and help in other measures and ways. I like to remark and remind the listening audience that the master identity thief is both my testament and testimony. It is captured in the context of redemption. And I understand redemption three-dimensionally. Redemption is first re-education. Simultaneous to that, it is regenerative. And after that, it is rehabilitative. So it's re-education, regeneration, and rehabilitation. And the rehabilitation aspect in my life of redemption is an ongoing process. And I don't mean that I'm constantly tempted to re-engage identity theft. No, I'm far removed from that and long gone. That is in my distant past. But rehabilitation, as it appreciates my pursuit for perfection in this life, ever trying to purify and cultivate what it means to have a moral foundation, moral instruction, and take wisdom into prudence and begin to be an example to and before those whom I walk. So, to the aspiring identity thief, be discouraged, because it is not worth it. I can capture some of the highlights of the story, but in the book, it does in fact take you on a roller coaster. It captures the highs, but it takes you down into the deep, dark valleys of the lows. Solitary confinement for 3 long years, unconstitutional solitary confinement, and being in prison, all those arrests and the things to which I was exposed, the lessons learned from those experiences, the things that I witnessed, the criminal injustices in a system that's designed against minorities that look and think like I do. There's a lot to this story, a lot of twists and turns, a lot of lessons, a lot of education that can be gleaned from the book, a lot of perspectives that no doubt will develop as a result of reading the book. And I trust and believe, Sunni and Brandi, that this is our first interview. We must have a follow-up because you guys seem to have only read the first volume and not the second volume. So this needs to be a 2-part series. I ain't trying to put you on the spot now.
We'll think about it. Think about it. All right, that's awesome. I mean, I read some of the book. I was captivated. I was interested. I did want to learn some more. And I was like, hey, on the podcast, let's let you tell your story so people can, tune in and read it. I like that it is about redemption. You're not like, hey, this is the best thing I ever did in my life. Busters. You were very, open with your thoughts, like, with your similarity to Jacob. And you were like, though it wasn't right, this is what I thought, and you were just being real with it. And I respect that and I appreciate that. Thank
you. And to the extent that your listeners want more information, please visit themasteridentitithief.com. I mean, it's a website that I designed personally, or rather my technology company did. And I hope to have created an experience in and of it when you visit, or rather land on that site. Check out the videos. Check out some of the people that give reference to the validity and veracity and the verity of the Master Identity Thief as a book. And let's just get engaged. Let's get educated.
We don't have to put our credit card information in.
Not, but no, not on that site. In fact, I would strongly advise you to stop using all your payment card forms and types and tests.
Yeah, I do prefer when they have PayPal. I love when PayPal is an option. But it still scares me just how easily, information is leaked. But I hear you. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. So, hey, look, I've had fun. I'm looking forward to being brought back onto the show. And let's create an opportunity where we can engage a Q&A session.
Yeah.
So that we can chase and go down various rabbit holes and see, what we find, what comes up. Because I'm just going to be just as authentic and real, transparent, upfront, frank, and factual about identity theft, about my life. Because this is an open book. I put it in a book for a reason. My PSI is in my book. That is my chronology and crime. And let's engage. Let's stay in touch.
All right, I love it. So we're gonna
put a pin in it.
Yeah, we're gonna put a pin in it. We're gonna let you guys listen. Let us know what you think. Definitely visit themasteridentitythief.com. Check out the show notes. We'll put a bunch of information in there. This was fun, Dartanyon. I'm glad you wrote the book. I'm glad that your team reached out and we were able to connect and talk to a past identity thief, because if there was not any regret, we would be all over you.
Lambast you from day one.
Thank you for taking it.
Yeah, thank you for being here and sharing your story, because a lot of people wouldn't.
Yes, ma'am.
She's right. So, thank you for being on the show. We'll go ahead and get that on there. But this was a lot of fun. I was nervous, but this is a lot of fun. Okay, so the only thing you have to say is it's bolt bitches, because that's what we're running with. So, would you wear a hat that said it's bolt bitches on it?
I think I would ask that you give me a pass on that one.
Okay, fine.
I'm in the space of being politically correct.
Okay, and bitches isn't very nice.
But I will say that as two minority females, you're both bosses. You're setting the standard, and I'm motivated and inspired by what you're doing, and I think that you will encourage others to do the same.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're deservedly welcome.
Well, that was a lot of fun. Thank you for sharing your time with us, because, of course, time is money. Time is very valuable. And we're going to put a pin in that. We'll bring Dartanyon back. And thank you so much. We hope you have a great day. And if you need anything, let us know.
I will. Thank you. You guys take care out there.
Okay, you too.
And good luck on the campaign trail.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey everybody, this is Nerd Bomber here, one of the co-hosts of the Online Warriors podcast. Our weekly podcast started as a way for three friends to keep in touch and discuss their passion for movies, gaming, technology, and entertainment. And since then, we've grown into a fantastic online community. Every Wednesday, we release a new episode discussing the latest nerdy news, and then we go hands-on with our weekly adventures and a fun trivia show. Sound interesting? Check us out on every podcast platform, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or hit us up at onlinewarriorspodcast.com.